Right now, someone is watching you. They're studying your reactions, measuring your responses, waiting for you to break. And every time you speak when you should stay silent, every time you defend when you should simply walk away, every time you react when you should remain still, you lose. This audiobook is about power, real power, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that operates in silence while everyone else drowns in noise. If you're ready to understand why the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous, why silence is the ultimate form of confidence, and why your refusal to react is your greatest weapon, then this message is for you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest. Let's start with a truth that will make some people uncomfortable. Volume is not power. In fact, in most cases, volume is the opposite of power. It's compensation. It's noise designed to fill a void. And once you understand this principle, you'll never look at loud people the same way again. Think about the people in your life who talk the most, the ones who dominate every conversation, the ones who can't go 5 minutes without interjecting their opinion, the ones who need everyone to know what they think, what they did, what they're planning to do. Now ask yourself, are these people actually winning or are they performing? There's a massive difference between confidence and performance. Confidence is quiet. It doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need constant reinforcement. It exists independently of external validation. Performance, on the other hand, is exhausting. It requires constant energy. It needs witnesses. And the moment the audience leaves, the performer deflates. People who dominate conversations are often compensating for internal emptiness. They're compensating for a fear of being invisible. When you observe someone who cannot tolerate silence, you're witnessing someone who cannot tolerate themselves. Their volume is inversely proportional to their actual power. That's the key. The louder they are, the weaker they feel inside. Why does someone need to fill every silence? Why do they need to be the center of attention in every interaction? It's not because they're confident, it's because silence terrifies them. Silence forces them to confront what's inside. And what's inside often doesn't match the image they're projecting. The loudest person is running from something, usually themselves. Now contrast that with silence. True confidence doesn't need to broadcast itself. It simply exists. When you can sit in a room and say nothing, you communicate that you have nothing to prove. Others feel your presence without you uttering a single word. And that creates an unconscious respect that talking can never achieve. This is not about being antisocial. This is not about being withdrawn. This is about understanding that your presence alone should carry weight. When you enter a room, people should feel it. Not because you announced yourself, but because you exist with such certainty that it's undeniable. Silence is magnetic. It draws people in. It creates curiosity. It communicates that you're comfortable in your own skin, that you don't need to fill space with words, that you're perfectly content to observe, to think, to exist without performing. Let me give you a real-world example. In boardrooms across the world, the person who speaks last holds the real authority, not the person who speaks first. The person who speaks last has gathered information, they've assessed everyone's position, and only then do they deliver a calculated response. This is strategic silence in action, and it wins negotiations. It wins respect. It wins long-term influence. Visualize this scene: a conference room, 10 people around a table. A critical decision needs to be made. The moment the meeting starts, certain people immediately jump in. They're eager, they're vocal, they're staking their claim. And then there's one person who says nothing. They're listening, they're observing, they're watching how people position themselves, what language they use, where their insecurities show up, what they're trying to protect. After everyone has spoken, after all the cards are on the table, that silent person speaks. And when they do, the entire room goes quiet. Because everyone intuitively understands that this person has been operating on a different level the entire time. That's power. Not the desperate need to be heard first, but the discipline to be heard last, and to be heard most effectively. Your words are currency, and like any currency, they lose value when you flood the market. The more you talk, the less impact each word carries. The more you react, the less your reactions matter. That's the key. you have a choice. You can devalue your own currency by making yourself common, predictable, easy to dismiss, or you can create scarcity. Silence is scarcity, and scarcity creates value. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest because they've devalued their own currency. They've made themselves common, they've made themselves predictable, they've made themselves easy to dismiss. Don't be that person. Understand that your silence carries more weight than their noise. Your restraint demonstrates more strength than their volume. Your ability to sit in a room and say nothing proves more confidence than their need to dominate every conversation. This is not about suppressing yourself. This is about strategic expression. It's about understanding that less is more. That impact is not measured in words spoken, but in words remembered. And the words that get remembered are the ones spoken sparingly, strategically, powerfully. So here's what I need you to do. Starting today, pay attention to your verbal patterns. Notice how often you speak just to fill silence. Notice how often you interject just to be part of the conversation. Notice how often you talk just to prove you're in the room. And then stop. Practice restraint. Practice listening. Practice being comfortable with silence while others scramble to fill it. Because the moment you master this, everything changes. You become the person people pay attention to. Not because you demand it, but because you've earned it through the discipline of strategic silence. You've learned that the loudest person is usually the weakest. That volume is compensation, not power. That silence signals confidence in a way that talking never can. Now let's talk about what happens when you stop defending yourself to people who don't matter. Chapter 2. Stop defending yourself to people who don't matter. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. How much time do you spend explaining yourself to people who have no authority over your life? How many hours have you wasted justifying your decisions to people who haven't earned that access? How much energy have you burned trying to make people understand choices that, quite frankly, are none of their business? If you're honest with yourself, the answer is probably too much. And that ends today. Every time you explain your choices to someone who didn't earn that access, you're giving away your power. You're putting yourself on trial for people who aren't qualified to judge you. The need to be understood by everyone is a prison, one you must escape immediately. Here's the thing about explaining yourself. It never ends. Because the type of person who demands explanations is the same type of person who will never be satisfied with your answers. They'll keep probing. They'll keep questioning. They'll keep implying that you owe them more detail, more justification, more proof that you're making the right choice. And you know what happens? You start doubting yourself. Not because your decision was wrong, but because you've submitted it for approval to someone who was never going to approve it in the first place. This is the trap. The more you explain, the more explanations are expected. You train people to believe that your decisions require their blessing. And once that dynamic is established, you've surrendered your autonomy. That's the key. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You don't need their understanding. When you defend yourself emotionally, you signal that the criticism has hit a nerve. Attackers feed on this reaction. Your defense becomes their confirmation that they've wounded you, and it invites more probing, more testing, more attacks. Silence, by contrast, deflects everything. Think about how predators work in nature. They look for weakness. They look for the injured animal, the one that's limping, the one that's showing vulnerability. And the moment they identify it, they attack. Human social dynamics work the same way. When someone criticizes you and you immediately jump to defend yourself, you've just confirmed that they found your weak spot. You've lit up the target, and now they know exactly where to aim next time. But watch what happens when you don't defend. When someone throws a criticism at you and you simply absorb it. Or better yet, ignore it completely. They're left standing there with their weapon in hand, confused. Because the expected reaction didn't come. The wound they tried to inflict didn't land. And without that feedback, they lose interest. Because they weren't actually interested in the truth. They were interested in your reaction. Imagine living without the compulsion to justify yourself. Imagine making a decision and simply standing in it, unmoved by commentary or judgment. This is not arrogance. This is sovereignty. When you stop defending, you stop hemorrhaging energy, and you reclaim the mental space that rightfully belongs to your mission, not their opinions. I want you to feel this for a moment. Imagine waking up tomorrow and deciding that you no longer owe anyone an explanation for your choices, your career, your relationships, your lifestyle, your priorities. You simply decide and you move. How much lighter would you feel? How much mental energy would you suddenly have available for things that actually matter? The truth is, most people in your life don't actually need to understand your decisions. They just want to feel included. They want to feel like they have a say. And when you deny them that, when you simply say, "This is what I'm doing," and refuse to elaborate, you establish a boundary that most people will respect. And the ones who don't respect it, they've just identified themselves as people who shouldn't have access to you in the first place. You have a choice. You can keep explaining yourself to people who will never be satisfied, or you can start living with the understanding that your decisions are yours alone. Here's your new operating principle. You don't owe anyone an explanation for living your life, not your family, not your friends, not your coworkers, not strangers on the internet. You make your choices based on your values, your goals, and your judgment. And if someone doesn't understand, that's okay. That's not your problem to solve. Stop defending. Start deciding. Notice what happens when you do this. Notice how much mental energy you reclaim. Notice how much clearer your thinking becomes when you're not constantly managing other people's opinions. Notice how much faster you move when you're not seeking approval at every turn. The people who matter will respect your boundaries. The people who don't matter will reveal themselves by demanding access they haven't earned. And once you see this clearly, you'll never go back to the exhausting cycle of constant explanation. This is not about being cold or closed off. This is about being selective. This is about understanding that your energy is finite and your mission is important. And every minute you spend justifying yourself to someone who doesn't matter is a minute stolen from building the life you actually want. You've learned to stop defending yourself to people who don't matter. You've reclaimed your energy and your autonomy. Now let's talk about how silence becomes your shield against manipulation. Chapter 3. Silence is your shield against manipulation. Chapter 3. Silence is your shield against manipulation. Every word you speak is information, and in the wrong hands, information becomes ammunition. The people who want to control you, manipulate you, or undermine you are not just listening to what you say, they're studying it, they're cataloging it. They're looking for patterns, weaknesses, buttons they can push, and the more you talk, the more material you give them. This chapter is about understanding that silence isn't just a communication strategy. It's a defensive weapon. It's how you protect yourself in a world full of people who will absolutely use your words against you. Every word you speak is data. Manipulators collect it, study it, and weaponize it. They listen for your insecurities, your triggers, your patterns, and then they exploit them. The less you say, the less ammunition you provide. Silence is not passive, it's protective. That's the key. Let me break down how this actually works. You're in a conversation, you're being open, authentic, vulnerable. You mentioned that you had a difficult childhood. You mentioned that you're sensitive about your career progress. You mentioned that you're worried about money. A normal person hears this and empathizes. A manipulator hears this and takes notes. Fast forward 3 months. You're in a conflict with this person, and suddenly they're bringing up your childhood. They're questioning your career competence. They're implying you're financially unstable. Where did they get this material? You gave it to them. This is why silence is protective. Not because you're being secretive or dishonest, but because you're being selective. You're governing access to your inner world. You're understanding that not everyone deserves to know your story, your struggles, your fears. When someone baits you with provocation, your silence is devastating. It communicates, "You are not worth my energy." It denies them the reaction they crave. Over time, they either give up or reveal themselves completely while you remain composed, observant, and in control. Here's a scenario. Someone says something designed to get under your skin. Maybe it's a passive-aggressive comment. Maybe it's a direct insult. Maybe it's a subtle dig at something they know you're sensitive about. They're watching you, waiting for the explosion, the defense, the emotional outburst, and you give them nothing. You maintain eye contact. You might even nod slightly, and then you continue on as if nothing was said. Do you understand how destabilizing this is for them? They just fired their best shot, and it bounced off you like nothing. They threw their provocation into a void, and now they're left wondering, did they not hear me? Do they not care? Did I completely misjudge their weakness? This is psychological warfare. And silence is your most effective weapon. You have a choice. You can react and confirm their assessment of your vulnerabilities, or you can respond with silence and leave them completely disarmed. In every workplace, there's someone who reveals everything. Their plans, their fears, their weekend drama. Then there's the person who asks questions, nods, and reveals nothing. Guess who gets promoted? The listener knows everyone's business. The talker is everyone's entertainment. One has power, the other has none. Think about your workplace right now. There's someone who tells everyone everything. They're broadcasting their personal life, their work frustrations, their opinions on management, their career ambitions, their insecurities. Everyone knows this person's business. And then there's the person who comes in, does exceptional work, asks thoughtful questions, and reveals almost nothing about themselves. Which one do you think leadership trusts more? The person who can't keep their own secrets, or the person who clearly knows how to exercise discretion? The oversharer might be more liked. They might be more popular, but they're not respected. They're not trusted with sensitive information. They're not considered for positions that require judgment and restraint. The silent one? They're being watched. They're being evaluated for bigger things because silence signals that they understand something fundamental. Information is power, and power is protected. Every word you speak creates exposure. And in a world full of people looking for leverage, exposure is risk. This doesn't mean you become paranoid or antisocial. It means you become intentional. It means you stop treating every conversation like a confessional. It means you understand that silence isn't withholding, it's protecting. Starting today, practice information discipline. Before you share something personal, ask yourself, does this person need to know this? Have they earned this access? Could this be used against me later? If the answer to any of these questions is uncertain, default to silence. You're not being dishonest. You're being strategic. You're understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world. That some people are gathering intelligence, not building connection. That your vulnerability is valuable and should be protected. Your silence is your shield. Use it wisely. Use it strategically. Use it to protect yourself from people who would absolutely weaponize your words if given the chance. You've learned that silence is your shield against manipulation. That every word is data that can be weaponized. That strategic silence protects you from those who would exploit your openness. Now let's talk about what happens when you lose emotional control. Chapter 4. Emotional reactions are leaks in your armor. Chapter 4. Emotional reactions are leaks in your armor. Your emotions are not your enemy, but your inability to control them is. Every time you react emotionally, every time you snap, explode, cry, or lose composure, you're sending a signal to everyone watching. This is how you break me. This is my weak point. This is where you push if you want to destabilize me. And trust me, people are watching. People are learning. People are taking notes. This chapter is about understanding that emotional control is not about suppression. It's about sovereignty. It's about being the master of your internal state instead of its prisoner. The moment you snap, cry, or explode, you've shown exactly where you're vulnerable. You've given your opponent a map to your pressure points. Emotional reactions are not authentic expressions. They're strategic failures. Mastering the pause between stimulus and response is where true strength lives. That's the key. Let me paint you a picture. Someone says something that triggers you. Instantly, your heart rate spikes. Your face flushes. Your voice raises. You fire back with emotion, defending yourself, attacking them, making it clear that they hit a nerve. What just happened? You lost. Completely. Because now they know. They know that topic is off limits. They know that comment gets a rise out of you. They know that if they want to throw you off balance, they just need to push that button. You've essentially handed them the remote control to your emotional state. This is why emotional control is not about being cold or robotic. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding that your reactions are information, and information in the wrong hands is a weapon against you. Train yourself to count to 10 before you speak in any charged situation. This tiny buffer creates massive distance between your emotions and your actions. It allows your rational mind to catch up with your reactive impulses. It's the difference between regret and respect. Here's a practical technique that will change your life. When someone says something that provokes you, do not speak. Not immediately. Count to 10, slowly, in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What happens in those 10 seconds? Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for immediate emotional reaction, starts to calm down. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, starts to come online. You create space between the stimulus and your response, and in that space you regain control. By second 7 or 8, you're no longer feeling the pure, unfiltered emotion. You're starting to think. You're starting to calculate. You're starting to ask yourself, how do I want to respond to this? What response serves my interests? What response maintains my power? This 10-second pause is the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is automatic and often regrettable. Responding is intentional and almost always more effective. You have a choice. You can react immediately and confirm their assessment of your weaknesses, or you can pause, think, and respond strategically. When you refuse to react, the pressure reverses. The other person, uncomfortable with the silence, begins to fill it. And in doing so, they expose their motives, their fears, their strategy. Your silence becomes an interrogation technique without you saying a word. Here's something fascinating about human psychology. People cannot tolerate silence in conflict. It creates anxiety. It creates uncertainty. It creates a vacuum that demands to be filled. So when someone provokes you and you don't react, something interesting happens. They start talking more. They start explaining themselves. They start revealing their actual position, their actual concerns, their actual strategy, all while you've said nothing. This is how silence becomes an interrogation tool. The less you say, the more they reveal. They're essentially arguing with themselves, exposing their hand, showing you exactly what they're thinking and feeling. And you're just watching, learning, gathering information, staying completely in control while they lose theirs. Chapter 3. Silence is your shield against manipulation. Every word you speak is information, and in the wrong hands, information becomes ammunition. The people who want to control you, manipulate you, or undermine you are not just listening to what you say. They're studying it. They're cataloging it. They're looking for patterns, weaknesses, buttons they can push, and the more you talk, the more material you give them. This chapter is about understanding that silence isn't just a communication strategy. It's a defensive weapon. It's how you protect yourself in a world full of people who will absolutely use your words against you. Every word you speak is data. Manipulators collect it, study it, and weaponize it. They listen for your insecurities, your triggers, your patterns, and then they exploit them. The less you say, the less ammunition you provide. Silence is not passive, it's protective. That's the key. Let me break down how this actually works. You're in a conversation. You're being open, authentic, vulnerable. You mentioned that you had a difficult childhood. You mentioned that you're sensitive about your career progress. You mentioned that you're worried about money. A normal person hears this and empathizes. A manipulator hears this and takes notes. Fast forward 3 months. You're in a conflict with this person, and suddenly they're bringing up your childhood. They're questioning your career competence. They're implying you're financially unstable. Where did they get this material? You gave it to them. This is why silence is protective. Not because you're being secretive or dishonest, but because you're being selective. You're governing access to your inner world. You're understanding that not everyone deserves to know your story, your struggles, your fears. When someone baits you with provocation, your silence is devastating. It communicates, "You are not worth my energy." It denies them the reaction they crave. Over time, they either give up or reveal themselves completely while you remain composed, observant, and in control. Here's a scenario. Someone says something designed to get under your skin. Maybe it's a passive-aggressive comment. Maybe it's a direct insult. Maybe it's a subtle dig at something they know you're sensitive about. They're watching you, waiting for the explosion, the defense, the emotional outburst. And you give them nothing. You maintain eye contact. You might even nod slightly, and then you continue on as if nothing was said. Do you understand how destabilizing this is for them? They just fired their best shot, and it bounced off you like nothing. They threw their provocation into a void, and now they're left wondering, did they not hear me? Do they not care? Did I completely misjudge their weakness? This is psychological warfare, and silence is your most effective weapon. You have a choice. You can react and confirm their assessment of your vulnerabilities, or you can respond with silence and leave them completely disarmed. In every workplace, there's someone who reveals everything, their plans, their fears, their weekend drama. Then there's the person who asks questions, nods, and reveals nothing. Guess who gets promoted? The listener knows everyone's business. The talker is everyone's entertainment. One has power, the other has none. Think about your workplace right now. There's someone who tells everyone everything. They're broadcasting their personal life, their work frustrations, their opinions on management, their career ambitions, their insecurities. Everyone knows this person's business. And then there's the person who comes in, does exceptional work, asks thoughtful questions, and reveals almost nothing about themselves. Which one do you think leadership trusts more? The person who can't keep their own secrets? Or the person who clearly knows how to exercise discretion? The oversharer might be more liked. They might be more popular, but they're not respected. They're not trusted with sensitive information. They're not considered for positions that require judgment and restraint. The silent one? They're being watched. They're being evaluated for bigger things. Because silence signals that they understand something fundamental. Information is power, and power is protected. Every word you speak creates exposure. And in a world full of people looking for leverage, exposure is risk. This doesn't mean you become paranoid or antisocial. It means you become intentional. It means you stop treating every conversation like a confessional. It means you understand that silence isn't withholding. It's protecting. Starting today, practice information discipline. Before you share something personal, ask yourself, does this person need to know this? Have they earned this access? Could this be used against me later? If the answer to any of these questions is uncertain, default to silence. You're not being dishonest. You're being strategic. You're understanding that not everyone deserves access to your inner world, that some people are gathering intelligence, not building connection, that your vulnerability is valuable and should be protected. Your silence is your shield. Use it wisely. Use it strategically. Use it to protect yourself from people who would absolutely weaponize your words if given the chance. You've learned that silence is your shield against manipulation, that every word is data that can be weaponized, that strategic silence protects you from those who would exploit your openness. Now let's talk about what happens when you lose emotional control. Chapter 4. Emotional reactions are leaks in your armor. Your emotions are not your enemy, but your inability to control them is. Every time you react emotionally, every time you snap, explode, cry, or lose composure, you're sending a signal to everyone watching. This is how you break me. This is my weak point. This is where you push if you want to destabilize me. And trust me, people are watching. People are learning. People are taking notes. This chapter is about understanding that emotional control is not about suppression. It's about sovereignty. It's about being the master of your internal state instead of its prisoner. The moment you snap, cry, or explode, you've shown exactly where you're vulnerable. You've given your opponent a map to your pressure points. Emotional reactions are not authentic expressions. They're strategic failures. Mastering the pause between stimulus and response is where true strength lives. That's the key. Let me paint you a picture. Someone says something that triggers you. Instantly, your heart rate spikes, your face flushes, your voice raises, you fire back with emotion, defending yourself, attacking them, making it clear that they hit a nerve. What just happened? You lost. Completely. Because now they know. They know that topic is off limits. They know that comment gets a rise out of you. They know that if they want to throw you off balance, they just need to push that button. You've essentially handed them the remote control to your emotional state. This is why emotional control is not about being cold or robotic. It's about being strategic. It's about understanding that your reactions are information. And information in the wrong hands is a weapon against you. Train yourself to count to 10 before you speak in any charged situation. This tiny buffer creates massive distance between your emotions and your actions. It allows your rational mind to catch up with your reactive impulses. It's the difference between regret and respect. Here's a practical technique that will change your life. When someone says something that provokes you, do not speak, not immediately. Count to 10, slowly, in your head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What happens in those 10 seconds? Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for immediate emotional reaction, starts to calm down. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thinking, starts to come online. You create space between the stimulus and your response, and in that space, you regain control. By second 7 or 8, you're no longer feeling the pure, unfiltered emotion. You're starting to think. You're starting to calculate. You're starting to ask yourself, how do I want to respond to this? What response serves my interests? What response maintains my power? This 10-second pause is the difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is automatic and often regrettable. Responding is intentional and almost always more effective. You have a choice. You can react immediately and confirm their assessment of your weaknesses, or you can pause, think, and respond strategically. When you refuse to react, the pressure reverses. The other person, uncomfortable with the silence, begins to fill it. And in doing so, they expose their motives, their fears, their strategy. Your silence becomes an interrogation technique without you saying a word. Here's something fascinating about human psychology. People cannot tolerate silence in conflict. It creates anxiety. It creates uncertainty. It creates a vacuum that demands to be filled. So when someone provokes you and you don't react, something interesting happens. They start talking more. They start explaining themselves. They start revealing their actual position, their actual concerns, their actual strategy. All while you've said nothing. This is how silence becomes an interrogation tool. The less you say, the more they reveal. They're essentially arguing with themselves, exposing their hand, showing you exactly what they're thinking and feeling. And you're just watching, learning. Gathering information, staying completely in control while they lose theirs. Your emotional reactions are not authenticity, they're vulnerability. And in a world that will absolutely exploit vulnerability, control is not optional. This doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming intentional. It means understanding that you choose your responses, and that choice is your power. Stop reacting. Start responding. Practice the 10-second rule every single time you feel triggered. Notice what happens when you create that space. Notice how often your initial reaction would have been counterproductive. Notice how much more effective your calculated responses become. This is not suppression. This is mastery. This is understanding that your emotions are valid, but your reactions are strategic. This is becoming someone who cannot be destabilized because you've mastered the pause between stimulus and response. You've learned that emotional reactions are leaks in your armor, that every outburst reveals your vulnerabilities, that the 10-second pause is the difference between reacting and responding. Now let's talk about the strategic advantage of being underestimated. Chapter 5, the strategic advantage of being underestimated. Let me tell you something that goes against everything you've been taught. You should want people to underestimate you. We live in a culture that screams, show everyone what you've got. Let them know you're coming. Make sure they see you. And that's exactly why most people fail before they even start. Because when you announce everything, when you reveal your full capability, when you make sure everyone knows what you're planning, you invite resistance, competition, and sabotage. The smartest operators understand something different. The less people expect from you, the more devastating your results become. The world rewards mystery and punishes predictability. When people think they know everything about you, they stop paying attention. When you operate in partial silence, you remain unpredictable, and unpredictability is leverage. Let them underestimate you. It's the greatest gift they can give. That's the key. Think about poker. The amateur shows excitement when they get good cards. They announce their confidence. They telegraph their strength. The professional maintains the same expression regardless of their hand. Good cards, bad cards, the face never changes. And because of this, opponents never know what's coming. They can't read the situation. They can't prepare. They can't defend. Life works the same way. When you're constantly broadcasting your capabilities, your plans, your potential, people adjust their behavior accordingly. They prepare for you. They compete with you. They position themselves against you. But when you operate quietly, when you let them assume you're less capable than you are, when you let them underestimate you, they don't prepare. They don't compete. They don't see you coming. And by the time they realize what's happening, you've already won. While others are announcing their plans, debating their next move, and seeking validation for their ideas, you're already executing. Silence eliminates the friction of external opinion. It allows for rapid, decisive action while everyone else is still talking about what they might do someday. Here's the pattern I see over and over again. Person A announces they're going to start a business. They tell everyone. They post about it. They discuss it at every opportunity. They seek feedback, opinions, validation. 6 months later, they're still talking about it. Person B decides to start a business. They tell no one. They quietly work nights and weekends. They build, test, iterate. They solve problems without broadcasting them. 6 months later, they launch a functioning business. What's the difference? Silence eliminated friction. Person A got caught in the feedback loop. They had to manage everyone's opinions, address everyone's concerns, defend their choices, explain their strategy. All of that took energy, time, and focus away from actually building. Person B had none of that friction. They just built. This is the speed advantage of silence. While everyone else is discussing, you're doing. While everyone else is announcing, you're achieving. While everyone else is performing, you're producing. You have a choice. You can announce your plans and invite resistance, or you can work in silence and deliver results that speak for themselves. Consider the entrepreneurs who spend years in stealth mode, perfecting their product while competitors broadcast every feature update. When they finally launch, they dominate, not because they had better ideas, but because they protected those ideas with silence until the moment of maximum impact. There's a reason why some of the most successful companies in history operated in stealth mode for years before launch. They weren't silent because they were insecure. They were silent because they understood something fundamental. Every time you announce what you're building, you invite competition. You invite people to steal your ideas, undercut your positioning, or launch before you do. But when you build in silence, when you perfect your work away from public view, when you launch only when you're ready, you create a shock effect. The market doesn't see it coming. Competitors can't prepare. And by the time they react, you've already captured significant ground. This is the strategic advantage of being underestimated. Let them think you're not a threat. Let them think you're not capable. Let them think you're not serious. And then show them results that prove otherwise. Being underestimated is not an insult. It's an advantage. It's camouflage. It's how you move through the world without resistance until you're ready to strike. Stop proving yourself to people who don't matter. Stop announcing your plans to people who will either doubt you or copy you. Stop revealing your full capability when partial revelation serves you better. Be underestimated, be dismissed, be overlooked, and then be undeniable. Work in the shadows while others work in the spotlight. Build in silence while others build in public. Perfect your craft while others perform theirs. And when the moment comes, when you're ready, when your work is undeniable, that's when you emerge. Not before. Not to prove yourself. Not to seek validation. But because the work is ready to speak for itself. You've learned that being underestimated is a strategic advantage. That silence eliminates friction and allows rapid execution. That working in stealth mode protects your ideas until you're ready to dominate. Now let's talk about the addiction that's killing your potential. Chapter 6. Validation. Seeking is a silent killer of potential. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How many of your decisions are actually yours? How many of the things you do because you genuinely want to, versus doing them because you want people to see that you're doing them? How many posts, how many announcements, how many choices made specifically because you knew they'd generate approval? If you're honest with yourself, the answer might disturb you. Because validation seeking is a drug. And like any drug, it hijacks your decision-making, distorts your priorities, and slowly destroys your potential. All while making you feel like you're succeeding. Every time you post for likes, speak for applause, or decide based on what others will think, you're outsourcing your self-worth. This creates a dependency that grows stronger with each hit of validation. You become a performer in someone else's theater instead of the director of your own life. That's the key. Here's how the addiction forms. You do something, you post about it, you get positive feedback, likes, comments, approval. Your brain releases dopamine, you feel good, so you do it again, and again, and again. But here's what happens over time. You stop doing things for their intrinsic value. You start doing things for the validation. The work becomes secondary. The approval becomes primary. You choose projects based on how impressive they'll sound, not whether they align with your actual goals. You make life decisions based on how they'll be perceived, not whether they serve your growth. You perform a version of yourself that generates maximum approval, even if that version isn't actually you. And the worst part, you don't even notice it's happening because the feedback feels good. It feels like success. It feels like you're on the right track. But you're not building a life. You're building an image, and images are hollow. Your biggest transformations, your most important decisions, your defining moments should happen in silence. When you announce your intentions, you dilute them. You get a dopamine hit from the announcement that satisfies the craving for change without actually changing. Do the work first. Let the results speak later. There's a psychological phenomenon at play here. When you tell people your goals, your brain gets a premature sense of accomplishment. You get credit for the intention before you've done the work. And that credit, that validation, reduces your motivation to actually follow through. This is why people who announce, "I'm going to lose 30 pounds, often don't. They got the congratulations, the encouragement, the "you got this" responses. Their brain already processed that as a small victory. The urgency to actually do the work decreases. Compare that to the person who says nothing, who quietly changes their diet, who quietly starts working out, who shows up every day without fanfare. Months later, people notice, "Wow, you look completely different. When did this happen?" That person got zero validation during the process, which meant they had to find their motivation internally. They had to do the work for the work itself. And because of that, they actually did it. You have a choice. You can announce your intentions and get credit without results. Or you can work in silence and get results without needing credit. Your most powerful moves should be invisible until they're undeniable. This is not about arrogance or isolation. It's about building an internal compass so reliable that external noise becomes irrelevant. Ask yourself, do I respect this decision? Does this align with who I'm becoming? If yes, move. If no, stop. Other people's opinions are data points, not directives. Here's the framework for breaking validation addiction. Before any decision, ask yourself, would I make this choice if no one ever knew about it? If there were zero social media posts, zero conversations, zero recognition, would I still do this? If the answer is yes, proceed. That's authentic motivation. If the answer is no, pause. You're being driven by external validation, not internal values. This doesn't mean you never consider other people's perspectives. It means you don't outsource your decision-making to them. Their opinions are information you can consider, but your judgment is the final authority. When you live this way, something remarkable happens. You stop performing. You start becoming. You stop chasing approval. You start building something real. And ironically, when you stop seeking validation, you often receive more genuine respect than you ever did when you were chasing it. You need to go on a validation diet. You need to start making decisions that no one sees, doing work that no one applauds, building a life that doesn't require an audience. Because the person you become in private, when no one's watching, when there's no credit to be claimed, when there's no validation to be received, that's who you actually are. And that person is either building something real or they're building nothing at all. Which one are you? Stop checking how many likes your post got. Stop crafting your life for other people's feeds. Stop making decisions based on how they'll be received instead of whether they serve your actual purpose. This addiction is killing your potential. Every moment you spend seeking approval is a moment stolen from actual progress. The most successful people you admire, they stopped caring about validation years ago. They made peace with being misunderstood. They accepted that most people won't get it, and they move forward anyway. That's why they're successful. Not because they're smarter, because they're free. You've learned that validation seeking is an addiction that destroys potential. That announcing your intentions dilutes them, that the work must come before the recognition. Now let's talk about the nuance most people miss. Chapter 7, Master the Art of Selective Transparency. By now you might be thinking, so I should just never share anything? Never be vulnerable? Never open up? No, that's not what I'm saying. Because here's the nuance that most people miss. Strategic silence doesn't mean total silence. It means selective transparency. It means understanding when to reveal, what to reveal, and who deserves that revelation. The amateur is either completely closed off or completely exposed. The master operates in the space between, revealing exactly what serves the situation. No more, no less. This chapter is about that calibration, about becoming someone who knows the difference between appropriate vulnerability and strategic stupidity. Strategic silence doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking with intention, purpose, and timing. The amateur is either completely closed or completely open. The master reveals exactly what serves the moment. No more, no less. This is calculated authenticity. That's the key. Let me break this down with examples. Situation 1. You're in a job interview. The interviewer asks about a time you failed. The amateur either refuses to answer, too closed, or launches into a detailed confession of every mistake they've ever made, too open. The master shares a specific, relevant failure that demonstrates self-awareness and growth. Calculated vulnerability that actually strengthens their position. Situation 2. You're building a relationship with someone new. The amateur either maintains complete mystery, which creates distance, or overshares every trauma and insecurity within the first few conversations, which creates instability. The master gradually reveals layers of themselves at a pace that builds trust without creating dependency or exposing unnecessary vulnerability. Situation 3. You're leading a team through a crisis. The amateur either pretends everything's fine, which erodes trust, or broadcasts every fear and uncertainty, which creates panic. The master is transparent about challenges while maintaining confidence in the path forward. Honesty without hysteria. See the pattern? It's not about always being closed or always being open. It's about calibration. You have a choice. You can default to complete exposure or complete mystery, or you can calibrate based on context, relationship, and strategic value. Secrecy is rooted in shame or fear. Privacy is rooted in self-respect. You don't owe anyone access to your inner world, your plans, or your process. Privacy protects your energy and your strategy. It's not hiding. It's governing your own territory with clear boundaries. People often confuse these two concepts, but they're fundamentally different. Secrecy says, I'm hiding this because I'm ashamed of it, or because I fear what would happen if people knew. Privacy says, this is mine. It's not hidden. It's simply not for public consumption. You can be private about your income without being secretive about it. You're not ashamed of how much you make. You simply understand that it's no one's business unless there's a relevant reason to share it. You can be private about your relationship without being secretive about it. You're not hiding your partner. You're simply not broadcasting every moment of your connection for public entertainment. You can be private about your struggles without being secretive about them. You're not pretending to be perfect. You're simply selective about who gets access to your vulnerable moments. Privacy is healthy. It's boundaries, it's self-respect. Secrecy is toxic. It's shame. It's fear-based withholding. Know the difference. Vulnerability shared with the right people at the right time builds connection and trust. Vulnerability broadcasted indiscriminately becomes emotional exhibitionism that invites exploitation. Learn to discern who has earned your openness and who is simply curious or predatory. Here's the test. Before you share something vulnerable, ask yourself, has this person demonstrated they can handle this information responsibly? Is sharing this going to strengthen our connection or create unnecessary burden? Am I sharing this for genuine connection or am I seeking validation or sympathy? If this person used this information against me, would I regret sharing it? If the answers are yes, strengthen, connection, and no regrets, share. If any answer gives you pause, don't. Vulnerability is not inherently good or bad. It's a tool. Used correctly, it builds deep, meaningful relationships. Used incorrectly, it creates exposure that can be exploited. The difference is intention and discernment. Share your struggles with people who've earned your trust and who have the capacity to hold space for you. Don't broadcast your struggles to an audience that views your pain as entertainment. Share your fears with people who will help you work through them. Don't share your fears with people who will use them to keep you small. Share your dreams with people who will support their realization. Don't share your dreams with people who will tell you all the reasons they're impossible. You have a choice. You can be indiscriminately open and get burned, or you can be selectively transparent and build genuine connections. Be open with intention. Be closed with purpose. Never confuse privacy with dishonesty, and never confuse openness with authenticity. The most powerful people are not the most mysterious. They're not the most exposed. They're the most intentional. They know what to reveal, when to reveal it, and who deserves that revelation. That's the art of selective transparency. Master it. You've learned the difference between secrecy and privacy, between indiscriminate vulnerability and strategic openness, between being closed and being boundaried. Now let's talk about the daily practice that makes everything else possible. Chapter 8. The compound effect of daily silence practice. Everything we've talked about up to this point, strategic silence, emotional control, selective transparency, these aren't just concepts, they're skills. And like any skill, they require practice. You don't wake up one day magically able to stay silent when provoked. You don't suddenly develop the discipline to stop seeking validation. You don't instantly know when to speak and when to stay quiet. These capabilities are built. Day by day, moment by moment, through deliberate practice. This chapter is about the daily discipline that makes everything else possible. The foundation, the training ground, the place where silence becomes second nature instead of a struggle. Dedicate 15 to 30 minutes daily to complete silence. No phone, no input, no distraction. This is not meditation, it's recalibration. You're training your nervous system to tolerate discomfort, to sit with your thoughts, to exist without constant stimulation. This daily practice builds the foundation for all other forms of restraint. That's the key. Here's what I want you to do, starting today. Set aside 15 minutes, just 15 minutes to start. No phone, no music, no podcast, no TV, no book, nothing. Just sit, or stand, or walk slowly, but do it in complete silence. And here's what's going to happen. It's going to be uncomfortable, intensely uncomfortable. Your mind is going to race. You're going to think of 17 things you should be doing instead. You're going to want to grab your phone. You're going to feel anxious, restless, maybe even panicked. Good. That discomfort is exactly what you need to feel. Because what you're experiencing in that moment is your addiction to stimulation, your dependence on constant input, your inability to simply exist without distraction. And if you can't sit in silence for 15 minutes, how do you expect to maintain silence when someone's provoking you, when someone's questioning you? When the pressure's on, you have a choice. You can avoid the discomfort and remain dependent on constant stimulation. Or you can practice daily silence and build the capacity for strategic restraint. This daily practice is training. It's how you build the capacity for all the other forms of silence we've been discussing. When you're not talking, you're noticing. You see patterns others miss. You read body language, subtext, and unspoken dynamics. This observational intelligence becomes your competitive advantage in relationships, negotiations, and decision-making. The quiet ones always know more than they let on. Something fascinating happens when you practice daily silence. You start noticing things you never noticed before. You notice how people's words don't match their body language. You notice the subtle power dynamics in every conversation. You notice who's performing and who's genuine. You notice the patterns in people's behavior that predict their future actions. This is because your brain, when not occupied with talking or consuming content, shifts into observation mode. You become a watcher, a reader of rooms, a detector of subtlety. And this observational capacity translates directly into strategic advantage. In negotiations, you notice when the other party is desperate, even though they're projecting confidence. In relationships, you notice when something's wrong before it's articulated. In business, you notice opportunities and threats that everyone else is too busy talking to see. The quiet ones always know more because they're always paying attention. Commit to 1 month of radical restraint. Speak only when necessary. Stop explaining yourself. Eliminate social media broadcasting. And observe the shift. You'll notice who genuinely values you versus who only valued your attention. You'll reclaim hours of mental energy. You'll discover who you are without an audience. Here's a challenge that will fundamentally change your life if you actually do it. For the next 30 days, speak only when necessary. If it doesn't need to be said, don't say it. Stop explaining your decisions. Make choices and stand in them without justification. Eliminate social media posting. Consume if you must, but don't broadcast. Don't announce your plans. Just execute them silently. When provoked, count to 10 before responding, every single time. What happens during these 30 days? Week 1. It's uncomfortable. You feel invisible. You question whether anyone cares about you. You're tempted to break the silence constantly. Week 2. You start noticing how much mental energy you have now. Your thoughts are clearer. Your focus is sharper. You're less anxious. Week 3. You start seeing who actually reaches out to you versus who only engaged with you when you were performing. Some relationships fade. The right ones get stronger. Week 4, you realize you don't want to go back. You've discovered a version of yourself that's more powerful, more focused, more intentional. The silence has become your natural state. This is the compound effect. Small daily practices that seem insignificant in the moment create massive transformation over time. You have a choice. You can treat silence as something you'll get to eventually, or you can make it a daily practice starting today. Stop treating silence as something you'll get to eventually. Make it a daily practice. Starting today, 15 minutes of intentional quiet. No exceptions, because every other principle in this audiobook depends on this foundation. You can't be strategically silent in high-pressure situations if you haven't trained for silence in low-pressure ones. Build the discipline daily and watch how it transforms everything else. You've learned that silence requires daily practice, that 15 minutes of intentional quiet builds the foundation for strategic restraint, that the compound effect of small daily habits creates massive transformation. Now let's talk about what actually creates lasting results. Chapter 9. Silent discipline beats loud motivation. Every time let's talk about motivation. You know that feeling, the surge of energy, the excitement, the I'm going to change everything starting today moment. It's powerful. It's intoxicating. It feels like the beginning of something major. And for most people, it's completely useless because motivation is an emotion. And like all emotions, it comes and goes. It's high today, gone tomorrow. Present on Monday, absent by Wednesday. The people who actually win, who actually build something that lasts, they're not running on motivation. They're running on discipline, specifically silent discipline, the kind that operates regardless of how you feel. Motivation is an emotion. It comes and goes with your mood, your circumstances, your energy level. Discipline is a practice. It operates regardless of how you feel. The person who quietly shows up every day without fanfare or excuses will always outlast the person who talks about their goals at every opportunity. That's the key. Here's the truth about motivation. It's unreliable. You're motivated when things are going well, when you got enough sleep, when you're excited about the outcome, when you have energy. But what happens when you're tired, when you're discouraged, when results aren't coming as fast as you hoped, when the initial excitement has worn off? Motivation disappears, and if that's what you're running on, your progress disappears with it. Discipline, on the other hand, doesn't care how you feel. It's not an emotion. It's a commitment. It's the decision to show up and do the work regardless of your mood, your energy, or your circumstances. And the most powerful form of discipline is silent discipline. The kind that doesn't announce itself. The kind that doesn't need cheerleaders. The kind that operates in the background of your life consistently, relentlessly, without fanfare. This is what actually builds results that last. Wake up early without announcing it. Work on your craft without posting about it. Improve your body without documenting it. These silent rituals compound over time into a life that speaks for itself. You become living proof that consistency matters more than intensity. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. Every morning, you wake up at 5 a.m. Not because you posted about it, not because you're tracking it for content, but because you decided that's when you wake up. Some mornings you feel great. Some mornings you feel terrible. Doesn't matter. 5 a.m. is when you wake up. Every day you work on your primary goal for 2 hours before anything else. Some days the work flows. Some days it's like pulling teeth. Doesn't matter. 2 hours. Every day. Every week, you train your body 4 times. Some weeks you're motivated. Some weeks you're exhausted. Doesn't matter. 4 times. Every week. No announcements, no posts, no day 47 of my journey updates. Just consistent, silent execution. You have a choice. You can wait for motivation to strike and accomplish nothing. Or you can build silent discipline and accomplish everything. And here's what happens over time. Those silent habits compound. The early mornings accumulate into hundreds of hours of extra productive time. The daily work sessions accumulate into completed projects, develop skills, tangible results. The training sessions accumulate into a transformed body, and one day people notice. How did you accomplish this? When did this happen? And you realize it happened in silence. While everyone else was talking about change, you were quietly creating it. One posts every workout, every meal, every motivational quote. The other shows up to competition and dominates. Guess which one actually put in the work? External validation is a distraction from internal transformation. The results will announce themselves when they're ready. I want you to visualize 2 athletes preparing for the same competition. Athlete A documents everything. Every training session is filmed. Every meal is posted. Every morning routine is broadcasted. They're building a following, getting engagement. People are cheering them on. Athlete B tells no one. They show up to training. They do the work. They go home. No posts, no updates, no audience. Competition day arrives. Athlete A has 50,000 followers. Everyone knows they've been training. The pressure is on. They perform adequately. Not bad, but not exceptional. They were so focused on documenting the journey that the journey itself became secondary. Athlete B has been operating in complete obscurity. No one knew they were training. No expectations, no pressure. They show up and dominate. Completely dominate. What's the difference? Athlete A was seeking validation throughout the process. Every workout was partially motivated by the content it would create, the engagement it would generate, the approval it would receive. That divided their focus and diluted their effort. Athlete B had one job: get better. No distractions, no performance for an audience, just pure, focused work on the craft. This is why silent discipline beats loud motivation. The person operating in silence is undistracted, undivided, completely focused on the work itself, not the appearance of doing the work. Stop performing your discipline. Stop announcing your consistency. Stop documenting your process. Just do the work, in silence, every day, regardless of how you feel, regardless of who's watching, regardless of who knows, because motivation will fail you. It will abandon you when you need it most. But discipline, especially silent discipline, that's permanent. That's reliable. That's what actually builds the life you want. You have a choice. You can perform discipline for an audience and get likes, or you can practice discipline in silence and get results. You've learned that motivation is temporary, but discipline is permanent. That silent, consistent execution beats loud, sporadic intensity. That the work itself matters more than the appearance of doing the work. Now let's talk about what all of this builds. Chapter 10. Your silence is your legacy. We've covered a lot. Strategic silence, emotional control, the power of being underestimated, the discipline of daily practice. But I want to end with the biggest picture possible. Your legacy, not what you say, not what you announce, not what you promise, but what you build, what you become, what you leave behind. Because at the end of your life, no one will remember your words. They'll remember your actions. They'll remember who you were when no one was watching. They'll remember what you built in silence that spoke louder than anything you ever said. This final chapter is about the long game, about understanding that your silence today is building something that will outlast any temporary noise. Trends fade, hype dies, loud personalities burn out. But the person who built their life on discipline, restraint, and silent execution, they endure. Their reputation isn't based on what they said. It's based on what they did. And what you do, consistently and quietly, becomes the foundation of everything you leave behind. That's the key. Think about the people you truly respect, the ones whose opinions actually matter to you, the ones you look up to. Are they the loudest people you know? Or are they the ones who consistently demonstrate through their actions that they're worth respecting? Chances are it's the latter, because genuine respect isn't built through volume. It's built through demonstration, through consistency, through the quiet accumulation of results that speak for themselves. The loud personalities get attention. They might even get fame. But attention and respect are not the same thing. And when the noise dies down, and it always does, what's left? For the loud ones? Usually nothing, because their entire presence was built on performance. And when the audience leaves, the performer has no substance. For the quiet ones, everything, because their presence was built on actual capability, actual results, actual character. And those things don't fade when the spotlight moves. You have a choice. You can build a life based on noise that disappears, or you can build a life based on substance that endures. In 10 years, will you be explaining yourself to people who don't matter? Or will you be living a life so aligned, so intentional, so powerful that it requires no defense? Your silence today is an investment in a future where your presence alone commands respect. Here's what I want you to visualize. 10 years from now, someone asks you why you made a particular decision, why you chose a particular path, why you prioritized the way you did. In one version of your future, you immediately start explaining, justifying, defending. Because you built a life based on other people's expectations, and now you need to explain why you didn't meet them. In the other version, you simply smile and say, because that's what I decided was right. And there's nothing more to say, because you built a life based on your own values, and the results speak so loudly that no explanation is necessary. Which future do you want? The first one requires constant defense, constant justification, constant performance for an audience that will never be satisfied. The second one requires only this: living in alignment with your values today, even when no one understands. Building in silence today, even when no one applauds. Choosing integrity today, even when it's not convenient. Your silence today is building a life that won't need defense tomorrow. The world is full of people who talk about change. Be someone who embodies it. Stop telling people your plans. Stop defending your choices. Stop performing your growth. Just grow, quietly, relentlessly, until one day you look around and realize you've become the person you used to only talk about being. This is the final and most important directive. Stop announcing who you're going to become. Start being that person today, in silence, without fanfare. Stop talking about the book you're going to write. Write it, quietly, in the early mornings, in the late nights, page by page with no audience, Stop posting about the business you're going to start. Build it silently, in your garage, your spare room, your laptop, feature by feature, with no validation. Stop broadcasting your transformation. Transform, privately, in your habits, your choices, your daily disciplines, day by day with no applause. Because here's what happens when you do this. Months pass, maybe years. You're working in silence. No updates, no announcements. Just consistent, focused execution. And then one day, you emerge with results. A finished book, a functioning business, a transformed body, a developed skill, a built life. And people are shocked. When did this happen? How did you do this? And you realize it happened while they were talking, while they were announcing, while they were performing. You were becoming. So this is your legacy question. What are you building in silence that will speak louder than anything you could ever say? Because that's what matters. Not your promises, not your announcements, not your explanations. Your silent work, your quiet discipline, your consistent action when no one's watching. You have a choice. You can spend your life talking about what you're going to do, or you can spend your life doing it. That's your legacy. That's what you leave behind. That's what people will remember. Build it in silence. Let it speak when it's ready, and understand that the quietest people often leave the loudest legacies, not because they announced themselves, but because their work was undeniable. Your silence is your legacy. Protect it, practice it, perfect it, and watch how it transforms not just your life, but everything you touch and everyone you influence. The art of silence is not about disappearing. It's about operating on a level that most people will never understand. It's about building power that doesn't need to announce itself. It's about becoming someone whose presence speaks louder than words ever could. You now understand why quiet people win in the end. Not because they're passive, not because they're weak, but because they've mastered something that gives them an unshakable advantage over everyone who operates on noise. They've mastered the art of silence, and so can you. So here's where we are. You've just spent the last hour, maybe two, learning something that most people will never understand. That silence is not weakness, it's warfare. That your refusal to react is not passivity, it's precision. That the quietest person in the room is often the most prepared, the most disciplined, the most dangerous. Now comes the only question that matters. What are you going to do with this? Because understanding means nothing without application. Right now, you have a choice. You can close this audiobook, go back to defending yourself to people who don't matter. Go back to reacting emotionally. Go back to announcing every move before you make it. And you will get the same results you've always gotten. Or you can start today. You can stop explaining. You can stop reacting. You can stop performing. You can move in silence. You can build in private. You can become the kind of person who doesn't need to say a word to command an entire room. The art of silence is not about being quiet. It's about being powerful. It's about understanding that the less you reveal, the more you control. So stop talking about what you're going to do. Stop defending who you are. Stop reacting to people who don't deserve your energy. Just move, quietly, strategically, relentlessly. And watch how everything changes when you do. The world is waiting for you to speak. Don't give them the satisfaction. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to get a notification for the next audiobook upload.